My name is Marshall, and this is Waveform. If you're someone who goes to game developer meetups or conferences, you know that by far the most common question asked there is, how do I get into the industry? I get this question all the time now as well, so I thought I'd make a video telling the story of how I got started in game audio, and eventually how I landed my job as a sound designer on the Just Cause 4 audio team. Now, of course, there are 1,000 different ways that people get into the industry, and I'm sure it'll be different for you if game audio is a career path that you're pursuing. But there are also plenty of things about the game industry that I wish I could go back and tell my younger self that I think would have made things a bit more clear and easy to wrap my head around. Those are the things I want to talk about today. If you're only here to see how to make sounds, no worries. Feel free to skip this video. Next Waveform, I promise we'll be back to the normal stuff, but for those of you that do stay, there'll be a few design tips at the end of this video worth sticking around for. Alright, let's start at the beginning. Make fun of me all you want, but the first time that I heard Skrillex in my high school courtyard was the day that I bought Logic Pro 8 on my MacBook and became obsessed with sound design. My friend Zach Heyde, who coincidentally went on to become one of the best composers I've ever met, showed me the In For The Kill remix on his iPhone speaker, and that's when I started just spending hours and hours every night in my room trying to make growl bass sounds. Years later, I continued to write more and more electronic music through college with increasing success, but junior year is when I pretty much realized that I wanted to pursue game audio as my career. That is when the anxiety set in. At Emerson College, where I went to school, there were no game audio classes at all, none of my peers even had an interest in game audio, and on top of that, there weren't even enough audio classes at the time to make a full schedule for my senior year. I was going to finish my last sound design class with another year left of school, and that seemed like completely wasted time to me. But there was some hope. The president of Emerson held open office hours every quarter for students to use as time to raise issues with him that they felt were important to the school. So I prepared a 10-minute presentation on game audio as a career and marched my way up to the 11th floor of Emerson's Anson building to try and convince our school president to create a new audio class for game sound implementation at the school. It did not work. He nodded along during the presentation and said that sounded like a great idea, but I stopped getting email responses very shortly thereafter and decided I had to do things a little differently. Instead, I followed the school's senior thesis program and just wrote my own curriculum for my senior year with my professor and mentor, Liz. My assignments were as follows: a 6-minute audio replacement of an animated short. I picked a video called An Object at Rest, which is actually posted on my YouTube channel right now. You can go check it out. And 4 episodes of an educational YouTube series discussing video game sound design. And yes, that became some of the first episodes of Waveform. At a certain point halfway through senior year, I realized something though. I was about to graduate, and even if I was a decent sound designer, I was still missing a massive part of the equation, and that was that I didn't know a single person working in games. I hadn't applied for any jobs, and I had no connections. This is when I really took seriously the idea of spending time not just on the craft, but on meeting people. This is an absolutely essential part of having success in the game industry, and I would imagine most other creative industries as well. In a stack of 200 resumes for a position at a game studio, the first people that are considered are usually just friends and acquaintances of people already working there, again, which is common in most industries, so getting to know people in as many places and studios as you can is probably the best single thing that you can do for yourself in this process. But of course, that's much easier said than done. Meeting new people can be difficult and anxiety-inducing, and even if you do go to a game audio lecture near you and you wait till after the talk, you know what it's like seeing 40 young people line up to give their business card to the same speaker. It can feel hopeless and like you're running in place, not making genuine connections, and to some degree I think that's true. I felt that way every year going to the Audio Engineering Society convention in New York City. I'd go to every game audio lecture on the docket, line up after the talk to meet the professionals, talk for 15 seconds, and never make a single real friend or connection. It can be a frustrating experience. So as graduation loomed closer and closer, I decided to try a new approach. I made an Excel sheet of dozens and dozens of my favorite sounding games I would have loved to have worked on. Then I looked through the credits of every one and found the name of the audio director and searched through LinkedIn to find his or her email address. Then I personally wrote dozens and dozens of emails to the audio directors telling them what I loved about their work and also telling them that I just happened to be in their city next week and I'd love a tour. This of course was not true. I did love their work, but I only said I was going to be in their city in the hopes that someone would say, sure, why not, give me a tour, and then I'd get a little bit closer to seeing the inside of a game studio and learning more about how day-to-day sound design work was done in AAA games. My plan was just to hope for a response and buy a ticket to whatever city I found something in. Then I waited. Of more than 50 or so emails, I got one response from Avalanche Studios. 1 week later, I was in New York City touring the office. Everyone was wearing t-shirts and hoodies, and I showed up embarrassingly in a button-down shirt and my nicest pants. I was able to tour the studio, ask some novice questions about audio workflow, shake many hands with awesome developers, and eventually, a few months after the trip and some more emails back and forth, I started an audio internship at the studio. Eventually, that internship led to more and more responsibility, and before I knew it, I was designing the physics sounds, big destruction, GUI sounds, character foley, prop ambience, a few weapons, and plenty more on this amazing game Just Cause 4 that I'm so proud of.
Does that happen a lot?
I'll be the first to admit that there's a ton of luck in my story. If almost anything had gone differently, I could have easily not ended up where I am now. But there are also things to take away that I think could help anyone trying to get their start. 1. Get obsessed with the work. What I haven't yet talked about were all the Friday nights that instead of going out to bars in Boston, I was sitting in my basement apartment trying to make the sounds that I was hearing in my favorite games. Work hard and every day try to learn at least one new thing about your craft. I mean, last weekend I was up till 2 a.m. failing miserably trying to make Mortal Kombat 11 style spell sounds on my laptop. If you can learn to fall in love with the exploration and failing part of audio, you're already off on the right foot. 2. Make genuine connections. Find a more unique and authentic way to reach out to people that doesn't just end in handing them your business card. Don't just make friends because you want a job. People can smell that kind of attitude from a mile away. I think it's worth taking the time to take a genuine interest in the people around you that you look up to and admire. This will of course benefit you in many ways outside your career as well. And 3, learn to reframe your discouragement into motivation. Nobody's career journey goes perfectly or without speed bumps. In a niche creative industry like game audio, you can expect to feel discouraged at times. Before that happens, decide in advance to push through it and keep improving at your craft no matter what. If the game industry is a career path that you're interested in, start steering, and best of luck. And now, as promised, here are some of my favorite all-time audio editing tips. Tip number 1, keep your bass in the center. For those of you that have ever mixed music before, you'll know how important it is to keep the bass frequencies centered in your stereo image. The same is generally true in sound design when mixing bassy sounds like gunshots or explosions. Tip number 2, white noise is extremely versatile. Make a folder in your sample library and just design a bunch of strange white noise loops and save them. They come in handy all the time. White noise can be used to make a tail for a loud sound, it can add brightness to a dull recording, or even just a little 20 millisecond sample of noise can add an incredible attack to a boring transient. Noise is one of the best tools in a sound designer's tool belt. Learn to love it. Tip number 3, search and destroy EQ. Sometimes there's a frequency that's really annoying in a sound that you want to remove with EQ. Make a very high band peak and sweep it across the sound until you hear the offending frequency, then turn the gain down. If you leave a strange sounding hole in your sound, you can replace the frequency you remove with white noise. Did my story motivate you to kickstart your own game audio career plan? Or do you wish I'd just shut up and get back to making sounds on my iPhone? Leave a comment below. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.